All right, this is the lecture for the final exam for History 369. I'm going to be discussing some things about World War II, and then I will send you a Microsoft Word document with some questions about this lecture. You'll email it back to me, and that will be the final exam. So I'm just going to be talking in this video about a number of things about World War II to fill you in, and then again, you'll just be answering some questions about the video, about this lecture. World War II for the United States began on December 7th, 1941, when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. Japan did so in an effort to keep the United States from going to war in the Pacific. Japan had built an empire in Asia, in places such as Korea, present day Vietnam, and they wanted to keep their empire. And Japan had also allied with Germany and Italy to form something known as the Triple Axis: Japan, Italy, and Germany. So they were allies. They were allied. Uh, the United States was officially neutral until Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, and the next day, Franklin Roosevelt asked for a declaration of war against Japan. After the United States declared war on Japan, Adolf Hitler then declared war on the United States. So the United States was now at war with Japan. Italy would also join in. So the United States was at war against Japan, Italy, and Germany. And the United States will fight on the same side as Great Britain and the Soviet Union. So the three main participants were the United States, Great Britain, and the Soviet Union. They are known as the Allied powers. The Axis powers were Italy, Germany, and Japan. The United States enters the war in December of 1941 and will keep fighting until August of 1945. For the United States, the war changes many things. First of all, it ends the Great Depression, something the New Deal was never able to do. It is American factories that build the weapons of war that help defeat the Axis powers. The United States will build tanks, airplanes, guns, all these weapons of war, uniforms, so on and so forth, that will supply Britain and also the Soviet Union with the material needed to defeat Nazi Germany, Fascist Italy, and Japan. On the home front, you have 6 million women who work in factories and other places in an effort joining in the war effort. Women do also serve in the United States military, though not in combat, but there are women who do serve in the United States Army. African Americans, over 1 million will serve in the United States military. And you also have African Americans who live in the South going to the North to cities such as Detroit because there are jobs there. This is known as the Great Migration. Now, the United States, as I mentioned, will provide a lot of the war material needed to defeat the Axis powers, but it was by no means certain that the Allies were going to win the war. In early 1942, Japan controlled much of Asia. They controlled parts of China, as I mentioned, present day Vietnam, Korea. They will also occupy islands such as present day Singapore, the Philippines, which was an American territory. They occupy that. It will be a very long and difficult campaign for the United States to meet Japan in the Pacific and eventually defeat them. In Europe, Adolf Hitler controls much of Europe. He has invaded France. He has invaded places such as Holland and Belgium. He goes into the area known as the Balkans. He takes over Greece. He has invaded the Soviet Union, present day Russia, and controls almost a third of the territory. He has possessions in northern Africa. So, what the United States, along with Britain and the Soviet Union, are going to have to do is force Japan. The United States is almost single-handedly is going to have to force Japan back to Japan. And in Europe, the United States is going to have to meet Nazi Germany, Northern Africa, Western Europe, where the Soviets will be fighting the Nazis in Eastern Europe. This is total war. The war is fought in a savage manner. It's estimated that somewhere between 60 to 90 million people are killed during World War II. The majority of people who are killed actually are civilians. Now, obviously, the worst part of that are the Nazis and the Holocaust. Adolf Hitler's Nazi Party was anti-Semitic. And when Hitler seized power in 1933, he and the Nazis began a campaign against Germany's Jewish population. They stripped them of all their rights. They denied them their citizenship. And as time went on, they began to persecute them even more. Now, when Hitler started World War II, he invaded Poland in 1939. And what the Nazis will do is when they invade countries such as Poland, France, Holland, Netherlands, the Balkans, they round up the Jewish population of those countries. And they will build death camps primarily in the country today of Poland. And they will round up the Jewish population, put them on trains, and send them to these camps where they are gassed to death. Now, there are some camps in Germany, but the majority of Holocaust victims are actually killed in Poland. 6 million Jews are murdered by the Nazis during World War II in the Holocaust. It's one of the worst events in all of human history. It was something that Hitler willed, that he wanted. The Nazis were just a racist, terrible people, and again, they will do this. By the time the war is over, they will have executed, murdered 6 million Jews in the Holocaust. Now, let me switch to, I'll talk about Europe, the European War, and then the war in the Pacific. The United States will fight with Britain in North Africa in 1942. And then in 1943, the United States with Britain will land in Sicily and Italy. But it's not until 1944 where the United States, Britain, and Canada will land in northern France, Normandy, northern France. The Nazis had taken over all of France. What D-Day, June 6, 1944, is about is the United States, Britain, and Canada landing in northern France to liberate it from the Nazis. The technical term was called Operation Overlord. It was planned by General Dwight David Eisenhower. It's June 6, 1944. And they land on 5 different beaches. And by the end of the day, they have taken control of those beaches. And over the next year, they will go from France into Germany to drive the Germans back to Germany and defeat the Nazis. In the Eastern Front, the Soviets are pushing the Germans back that way. There's a famous battle of Stalingrad, which takes place in December and January of 1942 and 1943. The Germans are defeated at Stalingrad. And so what occurs is the Soviet Union is pushing the Germans from the east, and the Americans, the British, from the west, And eventually, in May of 1945, the Germans will surrender. Adolf Hitler commits suicide on April 30th, 1945. The Nazis surrender, the Germans surrender May 8th, 1945. That is something known as VE Day, Victory in Europe Day. In the Pacific, the key battle is something known as Midway, that takes place in 1942, in which the United States will defeat the attack by the Japanese on the American territory, the island of Midway. This is the third. This is a turning point. There are three major turning points in World War II: the Battle of Midway in 1942 in the Pacific, the Soviets defeating the Germans at Stalingrad in December of 1942 and January of 1943, and then D-Day, Operation Overlord in June of 1944. And the specific dates for D-Day are, so for Midway battle are, let's see here. There's a new movie about Midway. If you're interested in seeing it, and see here, June of 1942 is when Midway took place. Between June of 1942 and August of 1945, the United States will engage in a series of military campaigns against the Japanese, designed to drive the Japanese out of these islands. These were ruthless campaigns. The Japanese fought to the death, such as in 1945 at Okinawa and Iwo Jima. And Franklin Roosevelt, the President of the United States, dies in April of 1945. He is succeeded by Harry S. Truman. Truman had not known about the building of the atomic bomb in Los Alamos in New Mexico. He is informed of that when he becomes president. And in August of 1945, the Japanese are warned that if they do not surrender, they will face imminent destruction. The Japanese ignore this, and the United States drops a bomb on August 6, 1945, in the city of Hiroshima, and then in August 9th on the city of Nagasaki. And after that, the Japanese surrender in September of 1945. So that ends the war in the Pacific. So the war for the United States took place from December of 1941 until the Japanese officially surrendered in September of 1945. About 450,000 Americans were killed, over 2 million wounded. But the United States emerges victorious at the end of World War II in what turns out to be the deadliest war in human history. And so that ends this lecture. Again, what I will do is I will send out a Microsoft Word document with questions about this lecture. You'll email it to me, and that will be the final exam.